All right. So welcome to tonight's webinar. This is the first webinar in a 4-day series. We're kicking this off October 28th, 2025. And the series is called Hormonal Transitions, Successfully Managing Perimenopause, Menopause, and Postmenopause. And it is sponsored by Robust Health Advocacy. So this is day one of the series. And so this particular webinar, we're going to be covering the basics of hormonal transitioning, including menopause and holistic treatment options. So I want to go ahead and introduce our keynote presenter, Annabeth Goss. Annabeth provides compassionate, expert nutritional care as a nutrition consultant at the Roselle Center for Healing in Northern Virginia and as founder of Enlightened Health, LLC. She is board certified in holistic nutrition through the National Association of Nutrition Professionals, NANP. So happy that you're able to join us, Annabeth.
Thank you, Angela. Happy to be here.
And I am your facilitator for this webinar session as well as the entire series. My name is Angela Forrest. I'm the founder and senior health advisor for Robust Health Advocacy. I provide comprehensive holistic support for individuals dealing with chronic health conditions. I have growing clinical knowledge. I'm always studying, I'm always taking more courses, working on additional certifications, in addition to 20 years of research expertise, looking at some of the most challenging illnesses and the most effective and innovative ways to address them. I collaborate with clients to empower them in finding lasting solutions to their health challenges. And just as a note, I am a patient of Annabeth. I have worked with her closely. She was very instrumental in my own healing journey, just by utilizing her expertise and her nutritional knowledge. So the topics that we're going to be covering for this session, we're going to be looking at definitions of the key hormonal transitioning phases, which include perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. We'll be looking at symptoms of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, talking about standard and natural ways to treat hormonal transition imbalances that are related to changes in estrogen, progesterone, and other hormones, and how women can continue to thrive and be fully functional as they age. So what does the term hormonal transitioning mean? And I actually spent some time trying to research this because we tend to use the word menopause a lot as this all-inclusive term that covers everything. In fact, it is kind of, a much broader spectrum of hormonal changes that are happening. And the main phases of these hormonal transitioning processes, these changes, are perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And so these stages, these 3 stages, the purpose of it from a biological perspective, it's designed to transition women from being physically able to conceive children to no longer being able to do that through the reduction in reproductive hormones, estrogen and progesterone, which alters menstruation until we no longer have cycles. So that's like the biological process. And I wanted to note that lifestyle, environment, relationships, and diet can all significantly impact how someone experiences these hormonal transitions, specifically in the severity of symptoms and awareness of how to address them. So I'm thinking specifically about stress and how stress affects the body in so many areas. All areas really are usually negatively. I don't know if there's any, there may be some examples of how stress positively affects the body, but I think it's the issue of chronic stress
Yeah.
and how chronic stress can really, when it comes to these hormonal transitions, can really make things so much worse. So we have the first phase of hormonal transition, which is known as perimenopause. And this is when the hormone levels start to rise and fall. Specifically, the ovaries start to slow down in producing hormones and eggs. I think when I was looking at one of the definitions, they talked about the ovaries are kind of getting ready to retire. So they're slowing down. This can cause menstrual cycles to become unpredictable. Perimenopause can occur anywhere between a woman's mid-30s to mid-50s. And I kind of go back to the lifestyle and stress and some of these other factors as maybe playing a role. I had also read research that shows that depending on when your mother or even grandmother or other women in your family enter perimenopause, that can also affect when you enter it. And it's important to note that fertility, while it is not as robust, it still exists. So you can still get pregnant in your 50s if you're in perimenopause. And I think we've all probably heard stories about that happening in our families and like other families. So it still can happen. Menopause is the second phase of this hormonal transition, and it's marked specifically by a woman experiencing 12 consecutive months without having a menstrual cycle. So the moment that you have to basically have to go through, 12 months straight of not having a cycle. Like if you go 3 months and then you have a cycle, you're still in perimenopause. At this point, when you enter menopause, the ovaries stop releasing eggs, and a person can no longer become pregnant through normal channels. Um, Annabeth, I know that you mentioned something to me very interesting about menopause, basically that it's like one day long. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And there are different ways of looking at what menopause is. You really won't know you have been in menopause until 12 months have passed. So, because perimenopause is that long-term process, and like you said, if 3 months in, or 6 months in, or heaven forbid, 10 months in, you have a full-on period, it might be a really strong period because your body's built up a lot of blood. It does start you over. So menopause could be looked at as that 12-month time frame, but you don't really know until it's done. And at that point, that one day, that's your menopause day. And the day after, you are now postmenopausal. So it's not necessarily an event or a specific day, but that's really the mark that you have been in it and you are now done with it.
hmm And that was one of many things that I was like, what? I had never heard this. That kind of was like eye-opening to me. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Good to know.
Yeah.
So some common symptoms that occur during perimenopause, menopause, and I should note postmenopause as well. We can continue. Decreased fertility, leading to the end of fertility, which is technically menopause, pain during sex, hot flashes, a rise in LDL cholesterol, which is technically called bad cholesterol. Although I think from a functional medicine perspective, there's no such thing as bad cholesterol. Mood and emotional changes, specifically anxiety, depression. There can be a lot of, you know, emotion going on. Changes, dramatic changes sometimes in emotions. Pelvic floor dysfunction, brain fog, and sleep problems, insomnia, among other symptoms. So, Annabeth, did you want to kind of talk a little bit about what is represented by pelvic floor dysfunction? what is that? What are some specific things that would fall under pelvic floor dysfunction?
Yes, I would love to. I would love to first add one additional thing to this list here, and it's usually the first thing that women say, and that is, I've gained 15 pounds
Oh,
and I
yeah,
can't lose it.
great.
It used to be clinically appropriated that it was 8 pounds, but literally now studies to show it's about 20 plus pounds. And that
Mm.
is normally a woman's first complaint. I've gained weight and I can't lose it. Is this doggone menopause thing?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a list, and that's a really good start. Well, it's a bad start, but it's a good start to the list of the bad list.
This
But
is
yeah,
not comprehensive. This is just
it's a
some of the symptoms. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, pelvic floor dysfunction is basically that pelvic floor is the floor that holds everything in down below. And just like you wouldn't want to be walking on a floor in your house with a basement below you that you could fall through, you want your floor to be really stable and solid. So it would start initially, I think, with usually a lot of women experience some urinary incontinence. So the urethra is not as strong as it was, and that goes into the hormones supporting that tissue and giving it elasticity, giving the muscle tone because hormones gauge muscle tone as well. It could also include rectal incontinence. It can also include prolapse, where you literally feel like things are just falling out of you, and that's when people end up getting sleeves and surgery and devices to help hold things in. So those are kind of a few of the few main ones.
Okay, great. Thank you. So postmenopause is the last phase of hormonal transition, which lasts from 12 months after an individual's last menstrual cycle until the end of their life, basically. Some people will have fewer symptoms during this stage, while others may experience some symptoms, continue to experience symptoms during postmenopause. So I was reviewing these slides and I realized, and Annabeth, you can confirm this, that the health risks to women actually can start in perimenopause because there are changes and reductions in the estrogen and progesterone that start in perimenopause. But I feel like a lot of the research and the evidence is coming out is postmenopause. I think maybe because there can be decades between when a woman starts to initially have the reduction in hormones until she's really dropped to like really low levels, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like the longer you go without those hormones or without kind of supplanting them, the more that these health risks increase. So the health, oh, you can go ahead, sorry.
No, I love that. And for those that are watching or will watch the podcast, I would love to give a shout out to Dr. Christiane Northrup. Um, this one is particularly the wisdom of menopause. It doesn't matter if you're going through menopause or if you're 30 years old, you still need to learn how to inhabit the vehicle that you have. And I was reading in this recently, and my husband glanced over and he saw the word perimenopause, and he asked me, "What's perimenopause?" And Angela, you'll laugh at my response. It just came so naturally. I said, "What every woman goes through and doesn't know anything about."
Yeah, yeah.
Because literally it is all menopause. We just hear I'm going through menopause, menopause, menopause.
Mhm.
Um, so when you're talking about the question, what kind of changes or effects does perimenopause have on our long-term health? Huge. Even in this book, she talks about by age 40, many women have already undergone changes in bone density. So we're talking when you're 60s, 70s, and 80s, your bone mineral density, hopefully you've hit peak bone mineral density between the age of like 15 and 28. And then every year thereafter, it decreases by 1%. So your bone density going into perimenopause, whether that's age 38 or 42, plays a significant role in how well your bones last you through all the rest of the decades. By age 44, a lot of women have begun to experience changes in their periods, whether they're lighter and shorter or longer and heavier. But again, a lot of women are not taught about what perimenopause is, and they just think something's a little bit off with their cycle. Don't realize what the shift that's really happening.
Mhm. Yes. So just to kind of go over some of these health risks. And these are generally tied to loss of estrogen and probably progesterone as well, Annabeth, I'm assuming.
Yes. And testosterone.
And testosterone, yes. And I didn't mention testosterone, but that one, maybe you can talk about that a little bit more when we get into the questions. But declines in cardiovascular health, so this can cause an increased risk for heart attacks. And I believe, I mean, there have been a couple of studies and the research that show that um, the estrogen in particular is very protective of the heart. So when women remain fertile and that estrogen is like at high levels, your heart is protected. But once you start to enter perimenopause, the risk of heart attack rises. So women typically have a lower risk before perimenopause, before entering the hormonal transitional period. And then once they kind of enter that and then going into postmenopause, the risk goes up to the same level as a man's. So we lose that protective factor for it, primarily through from estrogen. Annabeth has already talked about the bone health risks. And there also can be risks to brain health. I feel like there's so many other parts of the body that are also affected, but I wanted to focus on these main ones because these are kind of like big, big ones, I think. They're all important, but these are kind of like the big ones. And I also wanted to note that it's estimated that as many as 1.3 million women annually, or 6,000 women a day, enter, they list menopause. I'm not sure if they're actually talking about perimenopause, including postmenopause, but this is coming from the both the Yale School of Medicine and then Rupa Health are saying that 1.3 million women annually and 6,000 women daily enter menopause in the United States. The transition is often equated to a second puberty because there are drastic hormonal shifts that lead to changes in physical, mental, and emotional health. On average, women enter menopause in their 50s, but as I mentioned earlier, it can start in the mid to late 30s. Okay, so we are entering our question period. So Annabeth, because you have such in-depth knowledge and clinical experience working with patients on nutrition and the impact that nutrition can have on hormonal balance, among other aspects of health, I wanted you to respond to some of these questions and help educate us on how we can improve our experiences dealing with hormonal transitions.
You bet.
So the first question is, do estrogen and progesterone disappear entirely in women who are in the final phase of hormone transitioning, which would be postmenopause?
The answer is no. So, your hormones never entirely disappear because of the role they play in the body. Just like you mentioned, the cardiovascular protection of your heart, of your bones, and of your brain. Well, the good news is you're going to have your heart and your bones and your brain your entire life. So, therefore, you need some of that hormone protection as well. And it's not just the ovaries that create these hormones. So, your body fat, estrogen, progesterone, and androgens are all produced in body fat, skin, brain, adrenal glands, and even peripheral nerves on the periphery. So it's extremely important that as we are in the perimenopause symptom, or if we're in that 12 months of the menopause time when we aren't sure if we are or not, but hopefully we are, that we recognize the importance of that. I'm going to kind of give an analogy that may be helpful when we're talking about the perimenopause and the menopause and the post. There's kind of three types of menopause, so to speak. And if you pictured like, there's a mountain and I want to climb up and see that beautiful sunrise, I can take a long, slow, winding path, and that would be your 8 to 10 years of perimenopause. There might be some boulders that you have to get over, a few hiccups and bumps, but by and large, it's going to be a fairly gentle process. You could go straight up the mountain, and that would be a lot rockier. It would be shorter, and that would be a premature menopause where some type of stress, maybe you got in a car accident or something happened to the body where it just shuts down that system a lot faster. And then there could be the kind where you take a helicopter ride straight up, you get there fast, and that's typically surgically induced
Right, for
menopause, where
menopause, right?
you've had the hysterectomy, maybe a complete hysterectomy with the ovaries removed as well. And that's going to throw your body into menopause probably in a really, really strong fashion that is going to be very difficult for your body. And then you will be struggling with those symptoms that typically women complain about for a long time.
Yeah.
So those hormones do not disappear. They are very, very much needed. And the body is smart and intelligent enough to produce them from other sites.
Okay, great. So the next question is, are there symptoms and conditions that often mimic those caused by perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause? If so, how can you distinguish between the root cause of these symptoms?
Great question. I think for simplicity's sake, it's easy to just say I'm having some hormone issues. And typically when we say hormone, we mean female hormones. We don't necessarily mean, oh, I'm having an insulin hormone issue, or I'm having a inhibin issue, or I'm having a prolactin issue or oxytocin issue. We kind of know what we're talking about. Um, One of the main mimicry that happens in a woman is adrenals, and that absolutely can um, feel and look a lot like a hot flash caused by estrogen drop. And you can certainly have an adrenal hot flash during your perimenopause or your 12-month menopause time. And there are a couple factors of how you would determine between them. The first is if you're going through a high degree of stress. Having the systems shut down and the factories shut down can be a little bit stressful for the body because, the skin, the adrenals, they're picking up the slack for making those hormones. But that's what the body is intended to do, and it has circuitry to do that. If you are going through a high degree of stress, the adrenals respond by sending out the fuel injection hormone. Most people call it a stress hormone. I don't call it that because that's why it came, but that's not what it does. What cortisol does is it goes to the liver and it tells it to pull out stored glucose and put it into the bloodstream. The reason why is because it's responding to stress and it wants to fuel your body to fight or flee. And we need a lot of fuel to do that. So when you are under a great deal of stress, and the adrenals send out a strong surge of cortisol, it may have sent out too strong of a message and it overwhelms the system and it causes a hot flash. And people may not know whether that was ovary caused or adrenal caused. A few key indicators that it's adrenal is that it won't have some of the hallmark features of the ovarian hot flash. An ovarian hot flash, typically you kind of can sense it coming. There's a little bit of an aura that feels like it's coming on. It usually lasts a little bit longer. And then usually there's some sweating that goes with it, followed by a little bit of chill afterwards as the body now tries to regulate that heat with some colder temperature. In an adrenal hot flash, you're probably just going to get smashed with the wall of heat and want to flip off covers. And then that's kind of it. There's not usually a lot of sweating, but it could. The trick is if you are right in the final crunch of perimenopause. Angela, I have found working with people that the end of perimenopause, so let's say it's a 10-year process. years 8, 9, and 10 are probably going to be the ones where most people say I'm going through menopause. Their periods may be the period from Hades, a lot of blood, a lot of clotting, a lot of cramping, headaches, constipation, um, increased appetite, increased moodiness. Like the husband's like, I don't know who you are anymore. Or the girlfriend's like, you're on something. Um, and they can also be having hot flashes during that last time of perimenopause. Typically, at the end of perimenopause, when you've entered and you've stopped having periods, the hormones are not as raging because that's what that 12-month pause is. So you can still have hot flashes and you can still have some mood irregularity, but it's supposed to chill, calm down during those 12 months. So if you are still having a lot of stress, that's when you may not be able to distinguish what kind of hot flash I'm having.
Hmm. And I can think about 2 years ago, I was under a lot of stress. And the distinction that you made between the adrenal initiated hot flash and then ovarian, I can see now, like I was probably going through an adrenal initiated having adrenal initiated hot flashes. And then more recently, it's been like that kind of build up where you kind of feel that happening. So that's very interesting, very interesting. Um, do the body, mind, spirit impacts of hormonal reductions in estrogen, progesterone, and other hormones ever end? Does it ever end? Is it kind of like a continual, you know, breakdown of the body during a woman's lifetime once they enter postmenopause?
Great question. We always need those hormones in some form or fashion because they are helping our brains and bone and our heart and our immune system, and our cognition, our mood, um, our joints, our sleep, our fatigue, all of that is affected by those hormones. And so um, the impact of them never end because the body still needs those. And the hormones are your metronome. They help regulate, when you're going through perimenopause and prior to perimenopause, your hormones are the conductors for your minerals. So when you're taking calcium and magnesium, the hormones are actually the conductors to those little minerals saying, we want you to go there and we want you to go there. And that's how they're really tied into that bone health. Um, I will say that when women tend to get a little older and their hormone levels do tend to drop, it's actually the progesterone that drops. Estrogen doesn't drop very much until about the last year of perimenopause. And so you're going to also notice that in a little bit of loss of collagen and sagging skin. And then women will tend to start looking for those anti-aging creams, how to help tone up the eyes cream and the facial cream. And we should be really, really careful about anti-aging creams. We use a laboratory where we will send in saliva samples to test women's hormones. And the lab got in trouble for doing this, but about 10 years ago, they were willing to test for aging creams, anti-aging creams, not aging. That wouldn't sell very well. And so the lab took these four anti-aging creams, ran them, and they were 2, 3, and 4 times higher than a total dose of your hormone should be for a day. So
Mhm.
if one of the clients that sent these creams in, she had massive amounts of hormones. They were off the chart, but she swore she wasn't taking anything orally. So we want to be really careful about what kind of topicals we put on our skin because we still have a need for hormones and we don't want to be messing those up even if we are postmenopause.
Mhm. Okay, great. This is an interesting topic, and I think it's just an ongoing debate, at least in the public eyes. Can you talk about the use of hormone replacement therapy, that can ease or eliminate symptoms of hormonal transitions tied to changes in estrogen, progesterone, and other hormones, both through standard pharmaceutical interventions and more holistic natural methods? I'm thinking specifically about a bioidentical hormone replacement.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll touch base on the nutraceutical realm first because that's going to be the shortest, and I want to spend more time on some of the sorry, I'm going to touch base on the pharmaceutical and then we'll go to the nutraceutical. So pharmaceutical, you're pretty much standard conventional treatment is going to be that your doctor wants to put you on estradiol and progestin and call it good. And they actually aren't supposed to do that for more than 5 to 7 years because they have found that women longer than that tend to get some type of cancer, be it ovarian or breast cancer or cervical cancer. The reason why is progestin is the main culprit there. It's really, really dangerous. So if you do need some type of hormonal replacement therapy via a pharmaceutical drug, you do want to go with a bioidentical hormone. That might be with a compounding pharmacist, but your doctor should be very well versed in what a bioidentical hormone is. It should be progesterone itself. And it's way better to start out with a small dose. When scientists measure estrogen, it is in such a small molecule that they measure in picograms. And to put what 1 picogram into perspective, it is like dropping 1 drop of liquid estrogen into a train, a 600-gallon tanker that is 6 miles long. That is the amount of fluid that 1 drop of estrogen would be diluted in. So hormones are extremely powerful things, and it should be used with caution as to a I just went to my doctor and he recommended I take a testosterone shot and put some pellets in. Like that should be really used carefully. If
Mhm.
a woman has gone through that third phase of menopause that I said, surgical menopause, she absolutely needs to be on some type of HRT, bioidentical, but something because her body did not have the time to go through and be acclimated to the oxygen change and the altitude change that helicopter ride took her on. So her body will go into all sorts of crazy mode if she all of a sudden no longer has that production going on.
Mhm.
Now, what you can do to help the body facilitate in perimenopause is just like you said earlier, Angela, the more healthy a woman is during perimenopause, that 5 to 10 year process, the easier that 12 months will be, and many of her symptoms will be. There are some cultures around the world that don't have a word for menopause because their women do not experience it. Their their periods change, they don't have any symptoms, and they stop and they're done. They probably have a word for some change of life.
Mhm.
But by and large, our lifestyle has turned menopause into a disease.
Mhm.
Anytime that you can make anything a disease in this world, it's a great for the money making. And so knowing that the health of your physical body, your nutritional profile, and especially your mental state of being and your relationships and your stress play a huge role in that. Um, so as hormone replacement therapy for holistic methods, literally the first thing would be get your stress under control. Before you ever go to any type of pill, your lifestyle should be looked at. That is your number one lifestyle, meaning food. I could break it down, your stress levels, your sleep, your food, your relationships. In traditional Chinese medicine and in the woman's body, we have our heart here. This is called our high heart, where your heart would be. And then if you put your left hand down between belly button and pubic bone, that is your low heart. And when we have heart issues or struggles or relationship issues, it might be our high heart. We might have a heart attack, but very often it is our low heart. It's our ovaries, our uterus, our bladder, or our low back or our kidneys that end up having issues because of those emotional traumas that we were going through. So before a pill is ever introduced, it will be a crutch if those low heart and high heart issues are not addressed. And that will make a woman feel the best if she can work on correcting those heart issues, so to speak.
Mhm.
If she's doing the best she can and still needs a little bit of support, that's totally great. That's the culture that we live in. And that could be from things like food. There's a lot of debate out there whether or not soy is beneficial. There are so many discrepancies depending on which practitioner and which study you read. But some of the women that I respect and value the most, both Christiane Northrup and Lindsay Berkson, both talk about the estrogenic protective effects of soy. There are two main caveats to that, though. It must absolutely be non-GMO and organic soy product. And you also must have a good gut flora, because if you don't have a good gut flora, you're going to have a problem breaking it down and utilizing some of those isoflavonoids that the soy produces. You can bring in other complementary herbals like milk thistle would help your liver break down and process out the hormones that it's dealing with. Dong quai is an excellent herb. Black cohosh is used extensively, and one of the gold standards is chaste tree berry. It's been used for thousands of years because of its ability to help either regulate you up or regulate you down based on what you're needing. And there are a lot of combination products that have combos of those three. You can get them in liquid tinctures, you can get them in pill form. What you don't want to do is shoot in the dark and throw darts at a target in a dark black room where you can't really see the target on the board. You know that there's a dartboard over there and you've got darts and you're like, I know it's hormonal and I'm going to throw stuff at it.
Mhm.
But you'd like to it's better to get some guided help for you personally so that you can use the best nutraceutical and natural methods to help guide you through that.
And so basically that would probably mean getting your hormones tested, right? Getting a sense of what your levels are. And
Absolutely. And I'll just throw a pinch here for not doing blood. Your body produces 10 times more hormones, sex hormones, than it needs. And I don't know why. Why is the body made that way? I don't know, but it does. So, because that's a lot of hormones, it binds to about 90% of them, makes them inactive. That other 10% is not really circulating in the bloodstream. It's supposed to get into the tissue, get out of the blood, get into the tissue where it's supposed to do its job. So, when you get a blood draw tested, it's literally testing the bound protein, which is the inactive form. In addition, over the course of 24 hours, the hormones can range 500% because it doses them in spurts about every 2 hours. So when you get the draw done, what you ate, what your stress level is, the argument that you had, the conversation that you're anticipating later on in that day, all of those are really affecting your current levels of hormones. So blood work is the most ineffective. What is the most effective? Either urine, that's going to show you your metabolites and how your body is using what hormones you have, and therefore give you a gauge of what your hormone levels are. Or if you want a straight up number of what are my hormone levels that are really reflective in my tissue, that would be a saliva test. And generally, it could be a 1 day test. If a woman is still cycling, maybe she's got long or short, she wants to see, am I still ovulating? What are my chances of conception? You could do a cycle mapping, and that would be about a saliva test. You spit into a tube about every 3 days and send it in after a month. So I really like the saliva testing for hormones. You can usually also tag on an adrenal test to that so that we can see the adrenal function at the same time, because those adrenal glands are what's going to pick up the slack when the ovaries really slow down.
right. And we didn't define bioidentical. Can you define what bioidentical hormones are? So they're not pharmaceuticals, they're not synthetic.
Yeah, they're just more, they are more from what the body is created, and they're synthetic in a way that they're made in a lab.
Okay.
But they aren't necessarily the horse pill, which most back in the 60s and 70s when they were doing tests, they were literally using horse pill hormones in the testing, just straight up pharmaceutical synthetic hormones that vets were using.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
Um, that's interesting. And then I just wanted to mention that I mentioned this in a post that, and it's really tied to another question I have actually. So I'm gonna move on to the next question. Let's see here. Um, I'm going to jump to the second question because it's kind of tied to, I think, the second question. We can go back to the other one after. But why do you think that some doctors, particularly those working in conventional medicine, aren't able to fully support women going through hormonal transitions? And I just wanted to just briefly refer to the research that shows that 99% of all research that is done does not include any information on hormonal transition. So no information, it's not like incorporating any information on perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause. This is 99% of all aging studies, even though evidence shows 75% of all aging chronic health conditions in women are tied to perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. I think it's a mind-blowing statistic. So, on that note, what is your take on why so many doctors may be falling short in supporting women?
Yeah, twofold. I think the field they work in does not support outside of the box thinking. Their instruction and their education has been very textbook and standard, and it takes a long time for new data to turn a massive ship around and go a different direction in a stream. It takes a long time. Some people say it takes about 10 years for the data that has come out to now influence the medical mainstream.
Yeah, I thought it was
Additionally,
20 years.
it's something long. Yeah. Clearly, by the time I'm 50 to the time I'm 60, that's a long time for
Yeah,
my doctor to say, oh, by the way, I've been malpractice treating you this whole time. I should have been aware of something else. Additionally, you don't have drug reps that are out there soliciting doctors to do further research. You have drug reps out there that are soliciting doctors to sell their estradiol patch and to use the progestin. And here's the pens and the markers and the papers, and let me to take you to lunch. And here we're going to provide you with a weekend so you can get your continuing education credits for free. And there's a lot of grooming, so to speak, from the pharmaceutical industry. And I don't feel like there's a lot of benefit out there for the natural side of it on a monetary side. So it's quite ignored.
yeah, yeah. That's what I've found in doing research. And going back to the first question, can you talk about how the bioidentical hormone treatments work within the body mind to kind of help women function better as they get older?
Yeah. I was just speaking in my office today with a 77-year-old woman, and we were talking about hormones, and she said, Annabeth, I can tell you from personal experience that when you have proper hormones in your body, your brain can think better. She's like, I started progesterone 3 weeks ago, and I'm sleeping better, and I'm not as moody and weepy, and I have clearer thinking. Um, Ideally, the body is made from the very beginning to handle all of our hormone needs. When we're babies and we are born with every single egg we will ever develop. And that's really impressive to think about a little newborn baby girl having every egg she will ever release over the course of her lifetime. And the Lord didn't just make our bodies so that all of a sudden, oops, at age 50, you no longer have the capability of making hormones. That being said, our lifestyle and our culture very often impacts that negatively. And so some bioidentical hormone therapy can be very advantageous in helping that woman have better cognition, have better sleep, have more stable moods, help with energy so that you're not as fatigued, helps with your whole perception of the world. When women are in their 20s and 30s, they're very much in a child rearing state. Even if they're kind of a career woman, there's a lot of oxytocin, a lot of those hormones that are kind of home centered. And when they go through this perimenopause, there is a shift and a change in how the brain perceives themselves in relation to the world. They start noticing discrepancies that they don't like anymore. They become, that's why you have a lot of 50 and 60-year-old women entrepreneurs starting new businesses. It's really interesting because all of a sudden their mindset has now opened to the outside. And so it changes your hormones, change the way you perceive the world and where you are in the world. And so we want to make sure that that perception is accurate, that it's not shady and cloudy and mitigated with anxiety and depression and inability to contribute to life and living life at its fullest.
Mm, wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your perspective on the positive benefits of going through perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. I know you had referred to this book, the beginning of our session, The Wisdom of Menopause. So, I think these hormonal transitions get a really bad rap. I think there's a lot of, I know for me personally, like, I'm like, all these symptoms and things, it just sounds really unpleasant and just, is this going to last forever? And like, when does it end? And I can't tolerate these hot flashes. So we could talk about like some of the positive elements of this phase of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, well, so if you're starting and you're talking about, the negative impacts and the things that you're going through, number one is going to give you a sense of compassion for all the women worldwide who are still going through it and all your progenitors who went through it and were part of bringing you about into the world because they had to do it too.
Mm.
So it connects you. It is a connective thing with the other women worldwide. We're a pretty strong force to be reckoned with, and I think when we recognize, listen, we have that strength. We can get through really, really hard things that can be looked at as a blessing. It also can be kind of a cleanser. So if you are sweating a lot with those hot flashes, you can't but help but excrete toxins because that's what sweat is physiologically going to do. So you could potentially be like, oh, I'm having a hot flash. This is a nice little mini sauna. Okay, wipe it off. I don't know. Change the way you're thinking about things. It could be like, okay, great. I used to not wash my sheets at all. Now I'm washing my sheets 3 times a week because I'm sweating through all of them. I'm cleaner. But really, some of the positives through going through that is the change in perspective that comes to a woman. Their brain is literally on fire with the amount of hormones that are changing. And at the end of that, it is a beautifully refined and purified tool, so to speak. When you put something in a fire and it's forged, it comes out ideally more the form and the shape that you want it. Sometimes we get melted down into something else and reformed. But on the other side of that, our FSH and our LH levels are going to be stable. The 50, 60, 70-year-old women who do have good hormonally balanced lives tend to be those women that you turn to for connection and for wisdom because they aren't so flighty. They're wise, they're the sages, they're the people that we respect and value because their brains are keen and insightful. And that's really exciting to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So I wanted to see, I know we're a little bit over time, but I feel like this is probably, if it's okay with you, Annabeth, just we
Yeah,
can stay on a little bit longer just to see if people have any questions.
sure.
Um, and I'm actually going to stop the share so that I can see if people have any questions. And I think we have several more people join, so this is great.
Awesome.
So if anyone has any questions, you're free to put them in the chat. You're free to come off mic, you're unmute if you have any questions.
Yes, I do. Good afternoon. No, not afternoon. I'm sorry. Good evening. Or it's
Hi.
evening now. Hi. I'm joining. I'm sorry. I got a chance to. I'm joining late with you all, and I remember hearing. And thank you so much for this topic. I actually just saw it, and at right now I'm literally at the point of going through just getting some blood testing done. I've had bioidentical hormones before in 2018, and this was before even going into when it came to the whole perimenopause or anything like that. It was due to testosterone levels being low. And I just remember just hearing you as I'm kind of getting some food and some things together, hearing you speak about one, when it comes to blood work, not looking at the saliva. You also mentioned going through to looking at the metabolites in your urine as well. Is there like one of the things that I got to actually get blood work back when it came to, because I wanted to go get my estradiol and just certain levels when it came to estrogen and testosterone levels done again, because as you all were talking about, an enormous amount of stress right now. And I knew it canceled out everything that I had gotten in, honestly, in March, not March, I'm sorry, anything that I was going to get done in May after getting the another round of the bioidentical hormones. I was like, I just knew my hormones probably were all over the place. But my question would be, one, I don't think my primary care or my gynecologist actually suggested to get, we were just looking at the blood work, and you just kind of made me think about, as far as when you were talking about it, if you can kind of go over that one more time, and then one of the things that you can do to just advocate for yourself, or just even if there are particular tests or things that you would say, hey, you know what, make sure this is ordered, because I'm a person where I work hand in hand when it comes to my doctors and practitioners.
That's great. That's great. I love that you're your own advocate because nobody else has that job as much as you do. The reason, in my opinion, why doctors use blood work to check hormones is because it's easy. It's really, really easy to just go grab a blood draw. They'll check some other things while you're at it, your CBC, your CMP, maybe a lipid panel if you're lucky, an iron panel if you're really, really lucky, and maybe a vitamin D if you beg and plead. So it becomes an ease factor for them to run those, but like I said, very inaccurate as far as going through perimenopause. For postmenopause, the two main things that you look, well, I should say, to finish that 12 months of menopause and you're now postmenopausal, you not only need to have the 12 months of no period, but you need your FSH to be greater than 30 and your LH to be greater than 40. And those tend to be fairly accurate as a pattern. So if you just have one high reading, that is not necessarily indicative because they can fluctuate and bump around. But if you have, checked every 6 months and you consistently have the high FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and the high LH, the luteinizing hormone, then you're postmenopausal and you're good to go. The labs that I like for the dried urine, I've used Meridian Valley before. They're fine. Prefer to use now Dutch, which is by Precision Analytical, and the Dutch test stands for dried urine testing complete hormones. And they both have good turnaround time. They both have nice charts. I don't believe they sell to general public, so you'd need to order those through a practitioner. There's a possibility that the lab may sell to direct to client, but I doubt it. A lot of practitioners will increase the price of the test so that they can get a markup. That makes the tests very expensive. For instance, a typical Dutch complete test already runs $300. That's what we charge at Roselle Center because you actually send in the kit and pay the lab directly. But if you ever are speaking with a functional practitioner and they're like, yeah, I can run this for you for $500 and you pay the office, they've done a markup on that. So that would be the urine. I think it's better for the postmenopause women to do an actual level of what their hormone tissue is, and that would be the urine. I like Diagnostics. They do some really nice testing with the saliva.
Sorry about that. I'm up here writing I was trying to write in the chat. What
Yeah.
about who are before? Well, I'm not being diagnosed as perimenopause yet, but I kind of sort of, I don't, right now it's been I'm at a point where I have a regular period and everything. So when you were speaking on that, I think I'm in the perimenopausal still phase, or possibly just entering in that phase at this time. But due to the whole stress levels and things, I feel like it's just been hard to honestly to determine. And I'm trying to get kind of stable. That was the reason why a few weeks ago I said, okay, you know what, let me get the test done again. I feel things are a little quieted down a little bit where I can focus a little bit. But I was just wondering, is Is that okay to get the test that you mentioned if you're not post menopause?
Absolutely. So Dutch will test you at any point in time, as will Diagnostics. Diagnostics has different options, and that's why I like them. For a post-menopause woman, you just need a 1 day. There's not going to be a lot of fluctuation, so a 1 day collection is fine. I think there might be 2 vials. For a perimenopause woman, you could do a 2 day collection, and that's nice because it kind of gives you a look. For a cycling woman who's still cycling, whether regularly or irregularly, you could do a cycle mapping with Diagnostics. You can also do a cycle mapping with Dutch. And that will tell you what your flow looks like through the month. Are you having an estrogen rise like you should? Is it coming down? Is your follicular phase short or long? Is your ovulatory progesterone bump significant and robust enough that it shows that you were um, capable of conception? Is your progesterone drop too fast at the end, which is typically what makes women a little crazy, is when their progesterone drops too fast. Um, so any of those tests would be advantageous, just probably getting some personal guidance as to which one. And you could certainly go to either of those websites. They will have sample reports. They will try to teach you as much as they can. They will have some webinars that you can watch on their reports. I just don't think they sell to direct to patient. But you could certainly educate yourself and then go to a practitioner and say, hey, I would like this run. And if your practitioner doesn't offer that, they are not going to be up on what they don't know about. So they're likely going to be down on it. This is a good phrase. Doctors are down on what they're not up on. And so if they don't know, they won't want to look stupid. So they will say something like, blood work's sufficient. We've been using it for decades. That, or something along the lines. But truly, most all functional practitioners will use Dutch urine or saliva.
Yeah. And I was just going to add, I think if that happens, and I was going to say that's likely to happen if they are a conventional doctor, and the distinction between conventional doctors and functional medicine and integrative health practitioners is that functional medicine is more holistic. It's looking at the entire body. It's trying to identify root causes. It's seeing those connections that really exist between what's going on in one part of the body and other parts of the body. And typically, functional medicine doctors are up on these tests. So if you have a situation where you're going to your conventional MD and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, and you don't need this anyway, right? At that moment, that's when your advocacy needs to kick in. And you have a couple of options. You can say, well, I did my research and I identified that these tests, and I've actually spoken to someone, like Annabeth. I've spoken to someone who is skilled and knowledgeable about these tests and what they do, and I would like these tests, right? If the response is, well, I don't know anything about it and I don't think you need it, then you might want to look at, trying to align with a doctor who is more attuned to these types of tests. Um, I know Annabeth, had mentioned that it can get expensive. A lot of these tests are not covered by insurance. It's just the reality of our healthcare system. It is a profit-driven system, and the insurance companies aren't always going to cover the tests and the treatments that are really going to help you maximize your health outcomes. So it's just something to think about moving forward. Like if you can do your own research. I think that's why some of these companies have such extensive educational resources, because they know that people are often coming from environments where they're dealing with professionals, healthcare professionals who aren't knowledgeable about them. So they're trying to empower patients to understand what these tests are. They are also for profit though, right? Let's be real. They are also working to make a profit, but individuals like Annabeth, other healthcare practitioners, can give you that kind of background information to help you determine if you'd like to move forward and use a Dutch test or test through diagnostic tests. And then you can go to their sites and learn some more information and become educated. So hopefully, Terry, your doctor will be receptive and open to it. And maybe, and ideally, they'll be aware of these tests and be able to work with you. But yeah, the blood testing doesn't sound like it's going to really capture what's going on with your hormone levels effectively.
Yeah. Another great lab is doctor's data. They have some, that's the one that I personally use with my Enlightened Health business. The one here that Roselle Center uses is diagnostics. But they both have really good saliva testing, roughly equivalent in cost.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? And we're a little bit over time, so I don't want to keep any of us longer than when we need to. I just wanted to wrap up things just by quickly kind of noting, let's see here. If you need help on your health journey, if you need research support, if you need to find a functional medicine practitioner, I'm sure, of course, Annabeth is available. I can put Annabeth, did you want to put your website link into the chat for
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, I'd love to.
So I work with practitioners like Annabeth. I have a lot of people that I work with. I am essentially a health coach and a health advocate, and I teach people how to engage in personal health advocacy to get to the health results that they want. I also do extensive research for people on their health conditions, and I provide a lot of evidence-based information. This webinar series is an example of that. So if you want to connect with me, this is my information. I do free consults, and I'm going to continue to kind of share the blessings that I've received by working with individuals like Annabeth and other really gifted and compassionate practitioners because we all deserve that. We all deserve to be seen and heard, particularly as we are going through these hormonal transitions. So I just want to thank you, Annabeth, for joining us today. I
You're
want to
welcome.
thank everybody for joining us today.
I agree. Thank you, everybody who showed up tonight, because that shows that you're invested in your health, and that's the first step.
All right. Thank you all very much.